In the past couple of months, there's been a lot of generated controversy surrounding the Snow White remake set to be released by Disney next year. The initial controversy surrounding this film was the fact that they casted a Latina actress as Snow White. This actress is Rachel Zegler, who recently rose to fame starring in films such as West Side Story and Shazam! Fury of the Gods. While these films were not major box office successes, Rachel's talent has not gone unnoticed, and she's been able to build a name for herself in Hollywood relatively quickly. The second big controversy surrounding this film are the comments made by Rachel about the changes being made to the Snow White remake and characterizing the story as outdated and calling the prince a stalker. Essentially, with this new film, she suggests that the character's strength comes from her own doing and that the prince will become a useless figure in the film, suggesting that all of his scenes could even get cut. Jokingly, of course.
That it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that
she's not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be, and the leader that her late father told her that she could be if she was fearless, fair, brave, and true. I mean, you know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Super weird.
So we didn't do that this time.
So no prince or a different kind of prince?
We have a different approach to what I'm sure a lot of people will assume is a love story just because, like, we cast a guy in the movie.
Right.
Andrew Burnap, great dude.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that I think everyone's going to have their assumptions about what it's actually going to be, but it's really not about the love story at all, which is really, really wonderful. And whether or not she finds love along the way is anybody's guess until 2024. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby. The reality is that the cartoon was made 85 years ago, and therefore it's extremely dated when it comes to the ideas of women being in roles of power and what a woman is fit for in the world. And so when we came to reimagining the actual role of Snow White, it became about the fairest of them all, meaning who is the most just and who can become a fantastic leader.
Okay, I'm not here to pile on the female hate. I mean, to do that would be really counterproductive to the message I'm trying to convey here, and instead I wanted to critique the things that she said from an objective perspective and concluded that our anger has actually been misdirected. I mean, sure, she definitely could have used some better PR training, and her comments did come off as very condescending, but at the end of the day, these actors aren't going to come out and say things that aren't approved by the studios they're working for. And furthermore, people have been mad about this film long before Rachel Zegler said a word about it. I mean, looking at the first point, it's quite obvious that there was an existing problem with or without Rachel that ensured that this film was not going to be a big success from the get-go. So let's take a look at that initial controversy, which was the casting of a Latina actress as Snow White. Now, as a Latina myself of Mexican and Italian descent, seeing characters in the media who represent our cultures or even resemble us in any way is always important. I mean, it's why I love films like Coco, Girl in Progress, Selena, and so much more.
Nobody knows how tough it is to be a Mexican American.
These are original stories that capture the experience of being part of those cultures. However, when it comes to these live-action Disney remakes, and most recent Disney films in general, it just hits different. It comes across as completely disingenuous when watching it. One of the reasons for this is that never before the rise of wokeism had Disney ever considered diversifying its cast for the sake of having diversity. Seeing it happen all of a sudden really just feels like Disney's trying to stay relevant and actively checking boxes for all of their movies. The second reason is that there is absolutely no reason to change the color of the original character's skin. It doesn't contribute to the story in any way, and so that leaves us with the only rational conclusion that Disney is doing it to make themselves look better. If you wanted to edit a story where a person of color is cast in a role originated by a white character, the only way to make it genuine and not shallow is to make their ethnicity relevant to the story. And there's simply no way to do this without drastically changing the original stories, which, in my opinion, should not be happening. I'll give an example. When I was a kid watching Aladdin or Lilo and Stitch, I was excited to see characters that looked like me. Even if our ethnicities weren't the same, it was the first time I saw a Disney princess I resembled. And what made it even better was the fact that their ethnicities were relevant to the story and setting. it made it better and more believable. Whereas if I were sitting down as a Latina kid watching Snow White or Sleeping Beauty, I probably would have been more confused had they been a different skin color. Clearly, there weren't any Latinos in Renaissance Germany or medieval England. And I think what throws some of us off is the fact that we forget that these are all European stories, where racial diversity is incredibly more narrow. As Americans, we're just so incredibly diverse, and we're surrounded by so many different people who look so different from us, and we often see color over culture. As a result, a lot of people assume that being white automatically means that you have no culture, but what they don't realize is that they do. They're American. That's their culture. They don't find their identity in the color of their skin, but the people and place that they live and are raised in. Someone in England, Germany, or France won't look at a white person and automatically assume that they are their own simply because of the color of their skin. They are much more culturally tribal. And America is an existing culture, whether or not people want to acknowledge it. Nobody is one thing based on the color of their skin alone, so I think we need to move past these outdated ideas. Because of all this, it's really easy when we look at a story like The Little Mermaid, Cinderella, or Beauty and the Beast and automatically see that the princesses have white skin colors, and then we make the assumption that 1, they have no culture that's relevant to their character, and therefore 2, you can stick any race in there and it's fine. But that's not fair because it erases not only the location of the story, but the cultural context that shaped it. When looking at the live-action Little Mermaid, for example, as much as I dislike the story changes overall, I will give them this, that at least they changed the location and culture to justify the race swap. It's also why when we got Princess Tiana, it just made so much sense that she was American because she represents our culture so well. We are a melting pot. It's based on a European tale, but it took on a life of its own and gave us a new setting, story, and everything. So now that we've established that there was an existing rage towards this film, we can examine the anger that's been directed at Rachel and see if there's a common root. Now, I'm just going to say it. I don't think you're mad at Rachel. You might think so, and maybe you genuinely are, but your anger is not directed at the right person. Rachel is not a perpetrator of toxic female ideologies, but rather someone who is under the authority of its true perpetrator, Hollywood. Hollywood has directed and perpetrated the cultural context that has bred films like the live-action Snow White, more particularly the rise of woke culture, which has called for superficial diversification. And it even goes beyond race. Now they even tackle gender issues, which American audiences are not blind to this, and many don't even trust Hollywood to make a good and non-political film for their children anymore. For example, we see in the live-action Little Mermaid that the filmmakers went out of their way to change an entire storyline in order to make a statement about consent. Prince Eric was the hesitant one to kiss Ariel in the original Little Mermaid, because there was another girl he thought he was in love with. But of course, a woman could never want to kiss a boy of her own accord and desire. So they had to make a little change. They had to make Ariel the hesitant one to kiss Prince Eric in this new one because, wait for it, she had a spell put on her that made her forget that she was supposed to kiss Eric in the first place. Really, they had to go through the trouble of creating an entire new storyline just to put out a message about consent and make girls feel bad for wanting to initiate romance. So yeah, it's BS like this that have made people really upset and not want to give their money to woke Hollywood anymore, especially Disney. But in case that evidence isn't enough, let me remind you that we have gotten strong Disney princesses before. Hello, we have Mulan. In fact, we've gotten strong Snow White characters before that many of us loved. Both Mirror Mirror and Snow White and the Huntsman give us a Snow White that is unique and different from the Snow White we know in the original film, but we love them anyway. I think at the end of the day, all of these changes stem down to two things, or rather, our reaction to these changes stem down to two things: cultural context and good storytelling. We've become so tired of the fact that it's become more important to put out an agenda rather than tell a story well, that the sirens in our mind automatically go off when we hear of unnecessary changes like this. And woke Disney seems to be letting us down in both areas right now. That's why I think our anger lies not with Rachel, who, let's be honest, is probably just repeating the pitch that Disney gave her. And if Disney's signing your check, you're not really going to challenge them on a single pitch, are you? No. So next time you get mad at an actor for something they say, I encourage you to take the time to consider whether or not your anger is directed at the right person and whether or not it is to remind yourself to extend grace to them, because you would probably want them to do the same for you if you were in their situation. And that's the end of part 1. Thanks again so much for watching. Please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see more of my content. I hope you have a blessed day, and I'm sending love and positivity to you all. Thanks, bye.